And we're joined by a really special guest today. She's a UCLA women's basketball coach, Cori. Not only she's a coach, but she was a player back in the day for Santa Barbara, and she was a point guard. So we're gonna get into
way back in the day, way back.
So we're gonna get into her playing career, coaching career, March Madness experience, everything. So, but I just want to say thank you again for joining the show. It's truly an honor. I can't wait for this. And how are you and your family doing so far during this tough situation?
You know, we're doing, all things considered, we're doing okay. You know, it's I don't know about you all, but it's reminded me about the things that are really important. And you know, no one in my family has gotten COVID, and we're healthy. And you know, I have a job. A lot of people don't have that. I have a roof over my head. So it actually, in the midst of having some really, really difficult things and hard things, it's also been a good opportunity to choose joy and to be a person of gratitude. And I have a lot to be thankful for. So thanks for asking.
Mm-hmm.
Coach, I'm just curious, after a crazy season, I mean, there's been so many different things packed into this year, ending with an NCAA tournament that really highlighted some inequalities between men and women's basketball. What do you kind of look at? Do you have any new thoughts after being able to finally decompress after this season?
Well, it's hard. You know, you mentioned a lot of things right there, right? Whether it be the issues of racial inequality and where we are and as a sport as women, whether it be, you know, just we really have dove in this year in the issues of racial injustice and racial inequality. And that was a really big deal in our program about with More Than a Dream, MTAD, and how that was created. And then you talk about on the court, but we were the only team in the entire Pac-12 that did not have a COVID pause of any sort. Not one person missed a minute of a game in regard to contact tracing or anything else. And so, but the challenge of that, the isolation of that, the mental health aspect of that, even for me as a leader, you know, it was really a difficult and sometimes lonely year with all that we were doing in order to create our little bubble, right? And so, you know, I think that, you know, there's just a lot of areas I can go to answer your question, but let me say this about the areas of gender equity in regard to the tournament. You know, I think there's a misconception that when women are fighting for that next step of growth, we're not asking that, you know, we be paid the exact same as men's basketball. We're not asking that the dividends are the same as men's basketball payouts. But what we are really fighting for is that we have the same opportunity to engage our growth, the same opportunity to become an asset to the sport, the same opportunity to move from being a cause to a product that is worth investing in. And I think that the growth of our sport, meaning eyeballs on the TV ratings, social media in the virtual, you know, arenas and engagement, all of these numbers are going up. You know, the dollar, you know, the consumer dollar is really held in the hands of women. So our companies investing their advertising dollars in women and things of those sorts. We're just asking to have the same opportunity to grow. And that as our eyeballs have grown, as our ratings have grown, as our engagement has grown, that the same growth is happening in investment and in thought process and the opportunity to become an asset, a product, as you know, and I think those are the things, you know, it's interesting. They took all the Sweet 16 rosters from men and women, and an outside Deloitte looked at engagement and brand sponsorship potential, and of all the men's and women's back and forth, and they put them right next to each other, and 8 out of 10 of the top engagements were women. Wow. 8 out of 10. So that tells you, if you're a corporate sponsor, if you're somebody, we just need to have an infrastructure that promotes that level of growth. So I'm really passionate about seeing that through. But I want to be really, really clear that it's not a matter of, I love men's basketball. I'm a huge fan. I love to go watch Mick Cronin's practices at UCLA. And I'm an avid, I was just reaching out to Scott Drew yesterday with how to talk to him about some ways he built his team. And I'm a huge men's basketball fan, and I understand the incredible benefit March Madness has been for all of college sports. But I think it's time that we elevate women to the areas of which they've earned.
So,
more.
Yeah, actually, my father, he works for Deloitte.
So, oh, wow. How about that?
Yeah, so they're big into the partnership with the sports, and obviously that's Kathy, your commissioner for WNBA, is used to be part of Deloitte. So too.
Yeah, and which is I think a huge advantage because she comes at it from a business perspective and not just a sports perspective, and how to marry those and grow our game is really important.
Yeah, so this is a two-part question here. Take me back to your playing days at Santa Barbara. What were you like as a point guard? And did you ever think that you could have been in the WNBA too?
I really would have loved to. I was a little bit, so I've been coaching 28 years, and this is obviously the 25th anniversary of the WNBA. And I really didn't want to go overseas. That was the only option at that point for professional basketball for the women. But you can probably guess, if you've watched me coach, that I was sort of fiery and as a player, and I just love the game. I think that I'm passionate about pretty much whatever I do. And I think it was no different as a player, but I love the relationship side. I love the competitive side. I love the discipline side of what it brought out of me as a player and what it's really prepared me for as a coach. And so, I really was a late bloomer. I actually wasn't a very good high school player. I was okay. But I played a lot of different sports. And at that time, I never played AAU basketball. I just didn't have access to those kind of opportunities. And so I sort of randomly, the boys coach at my high school is a really good family friend. And he got me to go to this all-star camp. And there were going to be college coaches there. And I just was like, okay, I really had no idea what I was getting myself into, but he really believed in me, probably at a level I didn't believe in myself. And so I went to this camp and I did okay. And I really thought I was going to be a D3 player. I was going to go to a small Christian school outside of Chicago, Wheaton College, where my dad went. And, I really just didn't know that I could do it. And I went to this camp, and then I also went to the first Tara Vanderveer camp at Stanford.
Wow.
Way back when. And I'm still in touch with this person today, but I think about these two events. So Steve Kane, the boys basketball coach and family friend, got me to that camp. And then I went to the Stanford camp, and on the last day, Julie Plank, who was one of Tara's assistants, pulled me off to the side and said, Cori, you can be a D1 player. And I had just been told I was too short, too slow. I couldn't do it. And I just needed her to tell me, yeah, you can do this. You can be a Division I basketball player. I really think you should pursue it. And then I went to that camp, that all-star camp, and I did okay and got a Division I scholarship, a couple Division I offers. I wasn't even that heavily recruited, but like Pepperdine and Santa Barbara and some other ones along the West Coast. And I ended up going there and being able to help build it into being an NCAA tournament level team after we were 0-18 the year before I got there. And I think that's sort of what planted the seed on me loving to build things and build elite programs. But really, if it wasn't for Steve Kane and Julie Plank, I'm not sure I'd be in this position today.
Wow.
So important to have other people believe in you and kind of before you do. I want to get into that. But for anyone who is having a bad day or a bad week, watch a Cori Close press conference, not even like a pep talk, like a press conference. I was watching some leading up to this and obviously before the Pac-12 tournament. And you just walk away feeling better. What about your playing days and who else after those people who believed in you first inspired you to be the kind of coach you are now, where you're the one that's holding your players to a higher standard than they might have thought that they would ever get to? Or other instances that kind of propelled you to be the coach you are?
Well, I had great role models. My dad was a great teacher and coach and in early ages. But I think at every step, a lot of people end up becoming a coach because they had really poor examples and they became a coach to show how it could be done. I was the opposite of that. I just had great examples. My college coach, Mark French, he probably is the one who instilled in me that it was so much more than about basketball and that you were using it as an opportunity to create habits of excellence. That's what his big thing was, habits of excellence. And it's not a faucet you can turn on and off. You got to be excellent as a student. You got to be excellent as a human being, and you got to be excellent as a basketball player. And he really started that foundation. And then I had the opportunity to be mentored by John Wooden for 15 years. I started going to his house in 1993 when I was an assistant coach here at UCLA, way back when I had no idea what I was doing. But I started going to his house every other Tuesday night and just listening and learning. And one of the things I always remember about what he said, as he said, you know, you're not coaching jump shots, you're not coaching defense, you're coaching hearts. And you know, it's always whatever the tactical thing you're doing, it's always under the premise that you're coaching their hearts. And never forget that, Cori. And I remember I shared this with the team after we lost this year in the NCAA tournament. He used to always tell me, he said, never let the score of the final game, win or lose, overshadow the growth and the journey of the entire season. And, you know, and whether or not you have a major high, like the men's basketball team at UCLA and this storybook run, or you have a disappointing end that we have, I just never want to lose sight that the real important part is the journey and the growth. And Coach Wooden is the one who instilled that in me. And, but I worked for Kathy Olivier. Then I went back and worked for my old coach, but then I went to work at Florida State with Sue Semrau. And to be honest with you, I was out of whack. I was burnt out. I didn't have good balance in my life. And she really showed me how to do that, how to have more things in my life than just basketball and my career, and to, and it didn't mean you had to sacrifice your standards. It just means you had to organize it differently. And so that gave me a chance to learn about that example. And then I came from there, obviously, to become the head coach at UCLA. So I think I've just had great role models and people that have instilled in me things at different levels. And I just really want to make them proud by paying it forward in a purposeful way.
So obviously, your assistants at UCLA, Santa Barbara, and Florida State. So take me back to the opportunity when UCLA called you again to give you the head coaching opportunity. And was there any other offers out there? But how grateful are you to be in this position with UCLA again?
Yeah, I had some offers. I talked about, you know, Pepperdine at one point and some other mid majors when I was at Florida State. I had some opportunities, but this was the grand, you know, opportunity of them all. And honestly, I really was the least qualified on paper. I text Dan Guerrero, who was the AD at the time, all the time and say, thank you for taking a risk on me. Because that was a big risk. Because the other people they brought in, I think they brought in 5 people that they interviewed. And on paper, I was the first one. And on paper, they were all more qualified than me, every single one of them. And so I'm just so fortunate to, I'm so fortunate to have people that have believed in me on that front, but it was really baptism by fire, right? Like, let's go. And, you know, it really influenced the staff that I hired, because it was my first head coaching job opportunity. And I knew I was going to make some mistakes and there was going to be some growing pains in that. But I had been an assistant coach for 18 years, but those coaches I already spoke of, they really gave me opportunities to be responsible and to lead in ways that I think I was more prepared than most. And that's really a credit to those assistant coaches or those head coaches that I was an assistant for. But I was blown away I was just like, oh, there's no way I'm going to get this job. But it was weird because even though I was the first one, even though I was the least qualified on paper, I sort of knew I was going to get the job. It was just sort of meant to be. I could just tell it was aligning. The purposes were aligning. And so, you know, I'm just humbled and grateful because it sure wasn't my credentials that got that job.
Well, personality and inspiration, I think, are clear. They're right on the board for you when people look at you. For those that don't know, your team was one of 2 teams this year to beat the national champion Stanford Cardinal. Incredible game there in California. So what do people not know about coaching in the Pac-12? And then what do people not know about coaching at UCLA, the standard, the high praise, the expectations, and the wonderful, you know, tradition and history that they have?
Well, it's amazing. I'll work backwards at UCLA. I walk down the men's hall just because of where our benches are. Every time that's the hallway that we walk down, and on your right is 11 national championship banners. I mean, there were 10 and 12 in 11 years or 12 years, I think, and it was it's humbling. And then on the left side is all these amazing people, from John Valley to Keith Erickson to Marcus Johnson to Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. I mean, the list goes on, and that's just the men's side, and we have equally that. But it's this reminder before every game is, you are walking in sort of sacred ground of, you talk about Annie Myers-Drysdale was the first woman ever to be drafted into the NBA. Annie Myers and Denise Curry are the only two people to have their numbers retired, and they're both season ticket holders of our program and the way they give back. And there's just something about the history that makes you very encouraged, but also very responsible, and the excellence. But it's not even just basketball. Like, I love to pick Kelly Inouye Perez's brain about, she's a softball coach, and just the level of excellence that she's had. And I'm really good friends with Amanda Cromwell, the soccer coach, and I actually even sit on their bench during soccer games in non-COVID years. I'm like their psycho fan. You name it. I just love to learn. I think Adam Wright, our water polo coach, is a brilliant championship culture person. And so just love to learn from the people around. Just the level of excellence is just crazy. And I think it's inspiring as well as it holds you accountable. And so really excited about that. But the same can be said about the Pac-12. And I look at the excellent coaches. Like, if you don't bring your A game, you don't make adjustments, you don't grow your team, you're going to get left. And I just think about from top to bottom, I'm really proud of our team that we were the only team in the country to beat both of the teams in the finals, both Arizona and Stanford. But I just think about what the excellence brings out in us. And, I think our players, they're proud. Also the varied styles of play. You face everything from, pressing teams and athletic teams to disciplined half-court grinded out teams. And a lot of other conferences don't have that varied styles across at such an elite level. And so, it's really been an incredible ride. I mean, the last 5 years in a row, we've had pretty much the stellar performances in the NCAA tournaments. And I think we've established ourselves as really the best conference in the country. And you can't help but be prepared at a higher level. Look at Arizona and UConn.
Yeah.
UConn doesn't have near the competition. They're obviously incredibly talented. They have the player of their year on their team in Paige Beckers. But, Arizona had just been gone through the fire. I mean, we played a double round robin schedule, and they're having to grind it out in close games and overtime games and against different styles. And Connecticut's not playing that kind of schedule. They're winning most of their games by 30 points or plus. And then now they're in that situation and they're not battle tested. And I think that really was something that was very critical in the game versus Arizona and UConn. So, obviously mad respect for UConn and their history and what they do. But I just thought that was a real testament to the preparation of the Pac-12.
Interesting. So take me back to the Pac-12 experience and the March Madness experience, obviously underneath different circumstances and being in a bubble. So for you as a coach and your team, and obviously you have an amazing coaching staff assembled on your team. And what have you guys learned as a full team from the past year and in the tournament experience in the bubble?
Well, that it's really, really hard. Honestly, you think back to, if you ask years of the past, what are your favorite memories? What do you enjoy? What did you love about your college basketball experience? Of course, they're going to say the competition, but maybe as much, if not more, they're going to say the great memories they created and what they got to experience and the team meals and, all the different things that really, we call them remember wins. Remember when we did this? Remember when we did that? And, we always challenge ourselves as a staff to try to create the most remember wins in the country for the young women that choose to be a part of our program. And quite frankly, they didn't get a chance to have those this year. And that was hard. You didn't even get a chance to eat together. You had to eat by yourself. You had to grab and go and you had to be, you just didn't get a chance to hang out. I remember in the bubble they were just desperate to hang out with each other. So we had one group that was like doing TikTok videos in front of the elevators because you could socially distance. And then you had another group that set up a screen in the hallway playing video games, and they were 6 feet apart and they had their masks on, but it really wasn't about what they were doing. It was just about having to be able to be together. And so I just think it was really hard. I think if you asked any coach, this was one of the most challenging part about this season with everything with COVID is really the mental health aspect of this, and how that, really what keeps you going in the grind of a long season is those other things. those relationships and those memories, and we were just really limited, and we were even more limited than most because being in the Southern California and our county had the most restrictive guidelines, next to Santa Clara County where Stanford was. But I think that added to our challenge, but the bubble was difficult. I mean, it really was. And I think it put too much on just basketball. Like you're defined just by a little orange ball and a little orange hoop. And I think that honestly, that was really a difficult piece. On the other hand, we just were so grateful to have a tournament, so it's like, it was really, really hard, but what's the other option? Not having one? Yeah. So I think there's a humility of like all that went into, even though there were some mishaps, even though, and the bigger thing, we can talk about that, but with the men's and women's, it really wasn't the weight rooms. That was a symptom that the curtain got pulled back to a greater illness, so to speak. But even with the mishaps, man, we were so thankful to play. Wow, what a privilege. I mean, that was very much on the forefront of our minds. I actually saw an interview with Mark Few from Gonzaga right after he got selected. And he said, we're going to be the most thankful team in the tournament. We're going to be the one that thinks about all the good things. And I actually really challenged our team, like, let's be the most thankful group of people in this entire tournament. Even though it's hard, doesn't mean we ignore that. But we're going to be the most grateful team here. And I do think there was just a really healthy tension we wanted to walk, of being, this is really hard, but man, we're so thankful to be having a tournament, to be playing, to be here, to be healthy enough to play. All of the people that busted their whats to get us to this point. So really just having a humble gratitude for it all. It was one little story of an example of that. We do in our community service. We've adopted a young girl at an orphanage in Baja, Mexico, and another young girl at a leadership academy in Kenya, as well as a family who's transitioning from homelessness. Oh, wow. And they are, we do recycling. Our donors help, everything. We just recycle bottles and cans, and we use that money that we get from recycling to provide for these three people, Sheila, Yuri, and then this family that we've adopted here in LA. And we were like, hey, it might be inconvenient, but we got all these bottles and cans. At the tournament, let's collect them all. And we had bags upon bags, and we put them on the charter flight and brought it back to LA, these empty bottles and cans. We went and took the money, and we got the money, and we're buying, if you check base next week, you'll be able to see, we got to be able to buy really cool gifts for this family, the kids in this family that we're going to be delivering next week, with the bottles and cans that we recycled. And I think that came from an attitude of gratitude, right? So let's use this as an opportunity. As difficult it is, we can recycle till the cows come home, and we got it. And so we did, and we're able to really make a difference as a result. And that keeps things in perspective.
Wow, that's amazing. That's really amazing.
Doing two wonderful things at a time, recycling and helping out families. But I really feel like the adversity and like everything that grateful people are going through right now is only making them more grateful. It's going to be incredible to see kind of what comes from that. You did talk about the bubble and just how tough the strict protocol, all that stuff leading up to it. Because we saw so much success with the men's side, I'm curious if you saw, or if you've talked to any of the men's coaches on the Pac-12 side that surprised people in the tournament because, they weren't expected to have this many teams that go that deep in the tournament for whatever reason. Do you think that there is any bit of reasoning behind that strict Pac-12 protocol in a good way, like getting into that NCAA tournament? Did that help with success and on the women's side as well because Pac-12 was so stringent?
Yeah, that's a great observation on your part. I think the bubble was a really big adjustment for teams that hadn't had strict protocols all year. I mean, a lot of places, they were pretty open or they had several pauses and then they just kept going with what they were doing. And it's interesting, I think for those teams, it was like, whoa, I mean, we gotta test every day. We gotta wait and sit on the floor. We have X amount of false positives every day we have to deal with. We can't eat together as a group. I mean, just the list goes on and on. And if you hadn't experienced that leading up, it was jarring. And I do think it did have a tremendous effect on Pac-12 men's and women's basketball that we were under stricter protocols all year long. They really put the safety of the student athlete first. I give them a lot of credit. It was not easy getting to that point. I mean, you remember our season got pushed back to January 1, and then we were able to bring it back. I mean, it was very tenuous for a while. But the medical professionals, I was actually on most of those calls as they discussed how we could come back to the health and safety of a competitive season, and just really impressed with, they never ever wavered of the health and wellness of the student athlete being first. And that's not easy with how much money was at stake, you know? And so really, really grateful for the leadership that the Pac-12 took on that. And maybe on the front end, we didn't have any fans all year, right? And some other conferences did have some percentage of the fans. I think about, we actually lost money on the front end probably of that, but think about what we gained in men's basketball and how they performed on the back end. So just really grateful for all the medical professionals, for the administrations, the facilities people, all the people that had to really rally up with no precedent and no way of no blueprint of this, and finding a way to make it happen.
So before I want to ask you about Arizona and Stanford, but I want to talk about your team. I'm sure you're chomping at the bit for next season and really looking forward to it. And I want to talk about your transfer portals and the players that is coming in. And I had Cindy Brunson on yesterday on the show, and she really likes Gina Conti as a player. And what do you think of her, and what do you think she'll bring to your team?
Well, it's a little tricky. You may have to have me back because I really am only allowed to, they haven't signed all their, so all I can do legally is tell you that I'm really, really excited, and that, and I think we will be competing for a conference championship and a Final Four next year.
All right. I don't want to get you in trouble.
No, yeah, that's my responsibility. It's okay. But I am not allowed, until their grant and aid paperwork is all signed, I'm not allowed to comment other than, yes, we're recruiting them, and yes, we're really excited. But, you know, I think that we went back, and it's one of those things that, you know, you can choose to focus on what you like or don't like, or in the pandemic, you know, it is what it is. So we can complain about it, or we can learn to adapt and adjust and make the most of what we need to do. And the transfer portal is no different. The reality is I'm not a big fan of how many people are transferring. It really doesn't matter. I mean, what I think or what I feel. The reality is it's happening, and the one-time waiver is going to go through, and they're not, you know, it's just a changing landscape. And I remember meeting with our staff back in January and saying, okay, this is coming. How are we the most prepared to leverage the transfer portal? How are we most prepared to recruit quickly, effectively? What is their process going to be like, different than somebody else? Who do we need to tell that we're going to be very strategic? We knew we wanted to get 3 to 4 transfers, right. And how do we get the word out effectively to know that was going to happen? So we really developed a strategic plan for the transfer portal so that we were able to get really high level players that could make an immediate impact. And I really think that planning and that strategy, that vision by my staff was what gave us the opportunity to land such an amazing transfer class. So I really couldn't be any more excited, and I couldn't be any more thankful to work with such an amazing staff that put ourselves in a position to be that successful.
Yeah, I just want to ask about your thoughts real quick on Arizona and Stanford, and what are your thoughts on coach from Arizona and Ari McDonald?
Well, you know, Stanford and Arizona was just what a point of pride for the Pac-12. I mean, they worked so hard. They're such great programs. I just think that, you know, you had Tara Vanderveer, who's the winningest coach in women's basketball history, hitting that milestone this year. So to be able to celebrate her, and then obviously the well-documented, they spent 85 days in hotels, and you know, how they adjusted to the protocol, not being able to play or practice in their own arena for so long. And then to see them persevere and maintain their focus and be able to get to that final game, winning the national championship. Remarkable story, incredible celebration. Just obviously, you know, for someone like me who goes back, like I shared with Tara as a high school junior, all the way to playing against her and to coaching against her. And so there's just a big impact in what she's done. So really excited for her. I was actually at the last national championship game that in 93
Oh.
here in the sports arena. And so I just think about, I worked their camps for years and years, so there's just so much connection there. And then you've got Adia, who's similar to me, right? Was an assistant. She had a pro career. I didn't have that, but she, we worked ourselves up, and then someone saw something in us, right? And gave us a chance. And then as a mom, as a Black woman, a woman of color, and the representation and inspiration she provided in that, just spectacular, not only to our game, to grow our game, but to encourage women around the country that you really can have it all. And she has just done a spectacular job. She's not only transformed that team, she transformed the whole town of Tucson for the sake of women's basketball, and their crowds reflect that, the enthusiasm surrounding that. She's just done such a spectacular job. And obviously that was built around Ari McDonald. And I mean, we call her Dash here in our program. She's just everywhere. She's like the superhero Dash. And, just really, I mean, she's a great story. She actually wasn't this 5-star, McDonald's All-American. She goes to Washington, learns, and then she just works. I mean, she just outworks people, and she doesn't let anyone's negativity about her size or anything else hold her back. And I just think her perseverance, her grit, her belief in herself, her work ethic, and just her relationship with Adia and how that's played out over time. Arizona's just made our conference better once again. And so, people say all the time, well, how can you say positive things? Don't you recruit against each other? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. But the reality is rising tide lifts all boats. Yep. And you look at the best conferences in the country, they're the most competitive. And what does real competition do? It brings out the best in each other. Mm-hmm. And so to me, I celebrate that, because Adia's success is going to bring out the best in UCLA and the best in me. And same with Tara. I mean, it used to be Tara and the 11 dwarfs. I mean, really Stanford and the 11 dwarfs, it really was. And now it sure as heck hasn't held Stanford back to have all these other great programs. It's only pushed them forward and pushed them up. And I think we need to be better at that than as women. We need to build each other up. We need to blow wind into each other's sails. And that's the only way we're going to grow the game together. So I'm thrilled for Arizona, for Adia, for Tara, for Stanford, and for women in the Pac-12 across our country.
Mm-hmm.
Powerful words, and such an important message too. Like, we need to spread that through all industries, not just women's sports. Like, it shouldn't be surprising and inspiring for me to hear you talk about another player like that. I was like, wow, she clearly has so much respect for Ari and knows her story. That should be more normal. I really like that. So Ari and one other player, well, actually 2 other players, probably more than likely, from Pac-12 will go first round WNBA draft, and one of them's on your team. Talk about Michaela Onyenwere and her progression, watching her in practice, like one shoot around. She's so technical and she plays game-like in practice. Like, what can she bring to a team?
Well, I mean, she's so special. It's hard for me to articulate, and I'm not usually at a loss for words, but sometimes with Michaela, I am. She's the total package. For me as a coach, if you were to go, okay, I'm going to write a blueprint of what I would like attitude-wise, work ethic-wise, talent-wise, giving back to the program-wise, recruiting-wise in a player, I would write about Michaela's story. I mean, she's always one of the best teammates. She's incredible in her work ethic. She's added to her game every year. To see what her skill set was and her stats were her freshman year and now what they are now. You ask any of her teammates, who's the best teammate, she's going to be one of the people that's mentioned by every player. And she's just so talented, and she's explosive. She's taught her mind the game. She's been such a student of it. She watches more film than almost anyone. She's always saying, hey, coach, how can I help? Do you need me to talk to recruits? Or she's so passionate about her experience. She's a great student. I mean, the list goes on and on. And in the draft, I know they have tons of work to do, but she's not even scratching the surface. I think she'll be a better pro than she was a college player. And that's saying something. I mean, she's in like the top 10 in every category in UCLA history. And, I just think she's just hitting her stride. She didn't start playing until late in the 7th grade. And so to see what she's done, I remember recruiting her and asking her like, okay, how about playing professionally? She goes, I don't want to play professionally. Like, I'm never going to play that. I'm here to get an education. I'm going to be a dentist and that's it. But she didn't believe she could deep down. Or then the other thing is I've watched how she's found her voice from a racial injustice perspective and how she wants to make a difference in the world. And just, it's so fun to watch that. And I remember doing her home visit, and her 6th grade brother, UK, talked more in the visit than Michaela did. And then to see that versus now what she's doing as a strong, confident, articulate, forward-thinking, courageous woman, and how she's making a difference in the world. And, we have a core value in our program to become a lifestyle giver, not a lifestyle taker. And we always say you have to choose. And, to see how she has chosen, what is her unique path to be a lifestyle giver? And how does she want to have her service legacy make a difference in people's lives? And you just look at her and, I just am sad I don't get to be around her every day anymore. Like, of course we're going to miss her on the court, but I'm going to miss our conversations. I'm going to miss our time in the office. She came over to my house actually her car is out in front of my house right now. I got to help get it shipped to her after she figures out where she's drafted. But she came by to say goodbye, and we just ended up, Coach Shannon came over and Coach Tasha, and we just ended up having such of the coolest conversations about what she's learning and how she's doing and just what she's excited about. And I'm going to miss those. I'm going to miss those conversations more than anything. But I'll just say this. I guarantee you, whichever team drafts her, I'll be getting a phone call or a text going, oh my gosh, this is one of the most special people we've ever been able to be around.
Amazing. So what advice would you give young girls and young people that are trying to get to their goals? If it's coaching or playing, or what advice would you give them?
Well, first of all, we need more actually boys and girls to be playing youth sports. The numbers are going down. And I think it's one of the most preparatory things that kids can be involved in. It's not always that you have to end up in Division I, or it's not always that you're going to become a pro, but it teaches you self-esteem and leadership and teamwork and collaboration and self-discipline and time management. And you look at, some of our leading CEOs, men or women, they talk about their athletic background, preparing them to be leaders in our world. And so it starts with keep playing, figure out, keep playing. When we come out of COVID and there's opportunities, join that soccer team, play that youth basketball league, keep playing and learning. And I think it's one of the best environments to develop a growth mindset, to develop that grit of what it really takes to be successful in life. So my first thing is show up and play. My second thing would be don't let people's outside opinions determine what your roadmap and your vision and dreams can be. Dream big and work bigger. And if you're willing to work bigger than your dreams, you're probably going to land in a really special place. And, whatever your field is, I think it's, what lights you up, what makes you passionate, and whether it's dance or whether it's, robotics or whether it's sports, find your passion. Dream big in it, and don't let anyone in the outside world tell you anything different. I mean, I love doing these and I love social media. I think you got to use it in a productive manner. It's sort of like the transfer portal. It's here to stay. It really doesn't matter whether you like it or not. But I sometimes think it really negatively affects young kids. It just takes their spirit from them, the negativity or the judgmental spirit. And what we're trying to do is teach our players how to leverage and use social media in a productive, others-centered, purposeful way. Because if you don't, it can swallow you up. Yeah. And so I would tell young kids, use it appropriately, but don't let people you don't even know affect your roadmap, your dreams, your vision, and your work ethic to go create your own destiny.
Well said.
Huge. Social media has changed so much, even from when I played, from when you played, like just the generational changes. And we saw people step up in good ways this year, using it in the right way. Yeah. It's fascinating to me. That's mostly what I have for you question wise, but thank you so much.
Well, that's just for me. I don't want to make it seem like it's only little kids who need to do that. I got to preach that to myself.
Yeah.
every day, you know? I mean, you know, as adults, we have to, we always talk to our players about win the battle in your mind, set your mind every day. And we literally start out every single practice on mindset training. So we are going to set our minds. We don't believe that it just happens automatically. You have to choose discipline over default.
Yeah.
And it's just as important for me at almost 50 years old as it is for them. And so I think it's so important that we set our minds on the right things every day. And it's not mind hope. It's not mind maybe. It's a mindset. You got to set your mind in the right place. Otherwise you'll get swallowed up. And so I just think that's so important, but I don't want it to come across like I'm saying it's to everybody else. Believe me, I'm preaching it to myself first.
Have to.
So a couple more things here before we let you go. Obviously, I know that you're with UCLA, but if the right opportunity presents itself, would you consider going to the WNBA as a head coach?
Right now, that's not really my area of passion. You know, I believe that I always say this is not a job, it's a calling. And right now, I think that I'm uniquely suited, not that it would be this way forever, maybe later on, but right now, I think my passion and my purpose is affecting 18 to 23-year-olds in their unique time in life. And I think once you get to the W, I love the idea of, you know, working with the very best players and competing at the highest levels. But right now, my greatest passion is coaching people's hearts. And I get a lot more time with them in college. In the pros, they sort of show up, you know, do what they need to do, and then they leave. And for me, that's not enough. So I think I'll stay where I am at this point.
So yeah, so the last three things here, we partnered up with two companies. The first one is my aunt. She owns it's called Eplin X Cosmetics. If you're interested in their products, I'll send you the link. The promo code is NR20. I'll send you that. And then we're also partnered up with a company called Bucking Beards. It's a male's hairstyle product. Same promo code NR20. If your friends are interested or whoever is, I'll send you. We're just trying to help them so we can get more traffic for the show.
Yeah, please. I would love to pass the word on them. Send me their links, and
Yeah.
I will definitely put it out on my social media as well. And I think we all need to work together to promote companies that are allowing us to tell these stories, and you guys are a part of that. So thank you for doing that. And I'd be happy to join the cause in that.
Anytime, and thank you. And we're also part of the foundation called the Hugh Jackson Foundation. We're trying to help them prevent human trafficking, trying to make sure the community is safe and the kids make the right choices. And we're really grateful to be part of this foundation. Obviously, Hugh Jackson just got a coaching job at Tennessee State with Eddie George, so congrats on him. I'm going to send you the foundation so you can check it out. It's really inspiring.
Yeah, I'd love that.
Mm-hmm. And the last thing here, would you like to say anything to all the nurses, doctors, and essential workers right now?
Oh, such a great idea. I would add educators too. You know, I mean, this has been such a hard thing in terms of frontline people that have had to really carry the burden, right? And in so many different ways. So I think it would just be a humble thank you. Thank you for your sacrifice. Thank you for your ingenuity. Thank you for finding new ways, even when it was sacrificial for you or costly. You know, some of this is people have sacrificed not only their time or their safety, but also their own finances to keep things going in these times. And so, you know, as I said, you know, being a lifestyle giver, like you just look, you wake up every day and you go, how can I give? Not how can I get? And the frontline medical workers and our educators taking on this virtual learning and all the different things that have had to be, you know, there's so many people we could list that have sacrificed and been lifestyle givers in their fields. Just a very humble thank you. And just we know that we would be in a much different place without your giving sacrifices.
You're well said. And there it is. That wraps up episode 751 with the talented, inspiring UCLA women's head coach, Cori Close. Keep up the great work. It was truly an honor for you to join the show. And like I said, can't wait for the next season. Looking forward to seeing your team again play, and you and your family stay safe. And I'll be posting this on all social media formats.
Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it.
Anytime.
Bye-bye now.
Yep.
Thank you, Coach.